Hey guys, welcome to another Cinema 4D tutorial. And in this lesson, we're going to be going over the subject of space lighting. Now, I'm going to be splitting this lesson up into several different parts, and each part is going to be focusing on one particular aspect. The first part, we're going to be dealing with the modeling. Second part, we'll be dealing with the texturing, and the third part, we'll be dealing with the lighting. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to try to explain as best as I can why each part is important in playing a role in the final render, because we can put out a very basic crappy model and throw on some crappy textures and then have the best lighting in the world, but in the end what you're going to end up with is just well lit crap. So there's no reason for me to ignore the modeling and the texturing and shoot through that real fast and focus on lighting when the modeling and texturing plays a very big role in the end result. Alright, so a couple of days ago I was helping someone online with their space scene. They wanted to know how to make it look more realistic. So this is the render that the guy had, and this is what he made. Now this background image of this upper atmosphere with the planet, that's just some HD wallpaper. More than likely he found that online and just used it as a backdrop. But this is the model here with the spaceship and this platform. I guess this must be some type of floating upper atmosphere space station or platform or whatever it is. Obviously you can tell it doesn't look right. The shot in the back has hard lighting, and what I mean by hard lighting is you've got a direct light source coming from the sun. You can't see the sun, but you know it's there because you've got these bright spots on the clouds with the shadowing on the back side. However, there is no shadowing on the back side of this, and there's no hard light like a direct light source for the sun. If anything, you can see we've got a highlight that runs down here, which means that the light source is actually over on this side of it and not on the back side where it should be. Now, when you're dealing with upper atmosphere and beyond that, out into space, those type of shots are kind of hard to do because it's not like you can just say, well, okay, I'm going to hop in my rocket, I'm going to fly up there and take some pictures to use as a reference. You know, everybody's down here on the ground. So it's going to be kind of hard to actually mimic everything realistically if it was up in the upper atmosphere or out into space. So with some of this, we're going to have to guess. But for the most part, we know that direct lighting, indirect lighting, but on this model, none of that is present at all. So what he said was that on his machine, which he didn't give the specs on it, he said that it took 3 minutes to render just this one frame. And I don't know why it took so long. He must be using high settings because he said he had global illumination turned on, as well as ambient occlusion. So both of those features were turned on, and it took 3 minutes to render this at 1080p for just one frame. So I decided to take a few minutes and make a little mock-up scene of something similar to this. And this is what I put together here. So this is my little quick thing that I just kind of put together. I really didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. I just threw some quick textures on it. And on my machine at 1080p, this only took 30 seconds to render. Now, I did not have global illumination turned on or ambient occlusion. Those features were turned off, whereas he had them turned on. I did not have them turned on. Now, I don't know how many lights he had in his scene over here, but I can tell you that this particular scene here that I quickly put together only has 2 lights in it. That's providing the illumination for the outside part of this little floating whatever this is. Now, of course, I've got some lights here on the inside for the inside of the walls, as well as this little landing strip here. But other than those lights, there are only 2 lights in the scene. And I could have gone further with this, but I decided to just leave it at 2 lights because, as you can tell, it does a pretty good job. All right, so I'm going to show you what I did with all of this, and we're just going to build something just like this. And I'm going to demonstrate how you can get some really good lighting with very minimal lights, and you don't even have to use global illumination or ambient occlusion. So the first thing that we want to do is concentrate on the modeling. Now before we get started, in the description of this video, there's a download link for a plugin called Solid Chamfer. Now this is a plugin that's been around for a little while, and I highly recommend that you download it and use it. Now, I'm still using R13. Now, I know that in R15, Maxon released the new Bevel tool, and it's my understanding that this new Bevel tool actually does a really good job. However, I've never used it because I'm still on R13. So if the Bevel tool does a really good job, which we're going to get into here in a minute, If the R15 bevel tool does a good job, then perhaps maybe you don't need solid chamfer, but it's still a good plugin to have anyway. So you can go to the download link in the description to this video and download that plugin and install it. All right, so I'm just going to start with a cube. I'm just going to make it elongated. Something like that I think will work just fine. This is just going to be the little floating base. Now we have a feature over here, an option called fillet or fillet. I'm not actually sure how that's pronounced. I've heard so many people say both fillet and fillet. I believe it's pronounced fillet. But we want to activate that option. It's going to round the corners for us. And that's a bit too much. So we want to take this down to, we'll leave it at 5 for the subdivision, but we'll take the radius to maybe something like 5. Okay, yeah, 5 looks pretty good. We'll leave it at 5. So we'll take and we'll make that editable. And the reason why that we want to do this is because, and I'll just undo this a couple times so we can get back. There we go. If we have a cube, a basic cube just like this, what you have is a flat plane, and all of these planes are coming together to form the shape of the cube. Now notice if you zoom in here to this corner, it's just 3 points coming together is basically all it is. Well, actually it's one pointer if you were to go into point mode, but you have this edge, and then this one coming together, and it's all razor sharp. Now nothing in real life, especially a cube like this, is going to be razor sharp. The only thing that's going to be razor sharp is a razor. So you have to get some type of rounding or beveling to these corners to mimic realism. I mean, you know, if somebody had an actual cube like this and it was razor sharp, well, I pity the guy who tries to pick it up or rubs against it. You know, he's going to chop his arm off by rubbing up against it. So be sure that all of your hard surfaces have proper bevels. Otherwise, when it comes time to light, you're not going to pick up the proper highlights, and people are going to tell right away that it's fake, and it just doesn't look very real. We'll turn that option back on, and we'll take that back to 5. Okay, so now we've got a proper bevel there, and you can see it's picking up the highlight from the auto light that's on. And what I mean by the auto light is if you go into the render settings and you go over here to options, we have the default light. Now it's called the default light now, but it used to be called the auto light. And if you turn that off, what that means is when you render, it's no longer lit. It's lit in the viewport when you're orbiting around, but as soon as you render, that light is no longer on. So I'll turn that back on, and then we'll render again, and there's the auto light. It's just a basic light source with no shadowing. Okay, so we want to make that editable. Go into polygon mode, and I'm going to grab the knife tool. I'm going to disable visible only because I want to make some cuts that are going to go through the whole thing. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom. I'm going to hold down Shift and click across to make a straight cut. And you don't actually have to follow along with me if you don't want. You can do your own thing. You can make your own cuts or make your own shape. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to try to stick with what I showed you earlier. All right, so we want to go into loop mode, and I'm going to start with these little thin selections that I made, or these thin cuts like that one, and there's another one there. All right, and I want these to go in. So I'm going to grab the extrude tool, but the issue here is, and I'm just going to zoom into this corner so we can look at this a little closer. If we click and drag inward to extrude that in, watch what happens. Those polygons and those points are getting closer to closer together until they intersect, and suddenly we got a mess. So that's not going to work. We can't use the extrude tool to that extent because it's creating a problem for us. So what we can do is just extrude inward just a little bit, grab the scale tool, and we want to put the mouse cursor over the Y handle hold down Shift. That will automatically select the two handles over here, which is going to be the Z and the X. So back to the Y, hold down Shift, and then click and drag to scale those things inward, like that. And you can tell that it kept them from intersecting, and we scaled them in the distance that we needed them to go. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is select these larger ones here. Do a loop selection on those. And I'm going to go out this time. Okay, not too far, just a little bit. I think that'll work just fine. And we got one more down here at the bottom. So I'm going to extrude that one out as well. This time we'll go a little bit further with it. And the reason why I'm putting all of these extrusions and indentations and all of this in here is because if we go back and take a look at the original render, you can see that there are a lot of flat surfaces. There's not really a lot of extrusions. You've got maybe a couple little up here, and you've got this little half cylindrical shape here on the front of this base, but that's really about it. It's basically just a lot of flat surface, a lot of cubes being used in this, a lot of square shapes. And even if there was a direct light source in here, it's just going to be kind of rather bland. Whereas on mine, I put a lot of extrusions into it to pick up shadowing. That way, the left-hand side where all of these, where the direct light source is at, instead of just having that all directly lit, I kind of broke it up with some shadowing in there by the extrusions. So it just kind of helps to add to it. Also over here, you see there's this large metal structure, this rod that's poking out from over here, and it's picking up some direct light, which is actually really nice because it kind of like sets the contrast between this little piece here and the dark shadowing that's behind it. So it's always good to make extrusions and little details and shapes into your object, especially something like this that's going to be out in space, because if you just got a flat surface with no detail in it, it's going to look kind of crappy. So let's see, I'll select these two. Extrude those inward like that. And we're going to go down here to this bottom one. And the bottom one, let's see, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's take the bottom one and we'll do the front and the back side. Extrude that in. And then what I want to do is I want to extrude till they intersect in the middle. So see right there, those two faces from the front and the back, they're colliding right about there. So I'm just going to back it up a little bit, and then we'll just delete those two and get them out of the way. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go into edge mode, and I want to loop select those two edges, grab the, let's see, stitch and sew, and we'll click and drag over, and that will weld those two together. All right, so let's go up and do some more. Let's see, let's do something a little different here. Over on this side, we'll do something similar, but it won't be as extreme. All right, so we'll just make some simple ones up here. And again, you don't have to follow along and do the exact same thing that I'm doing. You're welcome to just make your own shape if that's what you want to do. And these two here, could probably just leave those alone, but we'll just make a little tiny one there. And that one there, we'll leave that one alone. Okay, so let's see, what else could we do to this just to add something to it? Let's do a loop selection there. extrude, enter. Extrude that out. Maybe back in. All right, so something like that. All right, so I think that this is looking pretty good. I think we've probably done enough with this as far as the extrusions go. All right, so now we need to start beveling all of these corners and these edges. And the reason for that is because right now everything, again, is razor sharp. And if we were to throw some lighting in here, we're not going to pick up proper highlights. So if we go back over here, that's the wrong one. If I click on my image, notice here, we've got a highlight there. We've got a highlight across there, one there. Down here along the bottom, we've got a highlight being picked up there. Now, if I did not bevel any of that, and we didn't bevel any of this here and left it razor flat, you're not going to pick up highlights across the bevel. See, there's some beveling there, the highlights being picked up. You got highlights along here, along there. So all of these little specular highlights are being picked up because the corner has been properly rounded. So this is a very big part in space lighting. Well, actually it plays a part in all types of lighting, but in space where you always have a direct light source, you always want to pick up those little specular hits of all the little details. So it's important to model your object correctly. Okay, so this is where the solid chamfer tool comes into play. Now again, you might want to try the bevel tool in R15. It may do the same identical thing. As I said, I've never used it, so I don't know. I can't comment on it. All I can say is that if you're not using R15, then be sure to download solid chamfer and give it a try. All right, so we're going to start down here at the bottom. And what I want to do is I want to go into edge mode, and I'm going to select that loop row of edges. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose solid chamfer. Now I put solid chamfer, let's see, I've had this on here for a while, and I believe that I put it into this sub menu here for the right click menu with all of these different tools. More than likely you may need to go up to the plugins. I'm trying to remember, let's see, yeah, solid chamfer, there it is. So this here is actually where you would want to go to get it. So you may need to take this and dock it in a palette. What I did was I just went into the menu commands and I just placed it where I can right click and get to it there instead of having to dock it over here in a palette somewhere or go up to the drop down menu for the plugins. So once you get the solid chamfer plugin installed and you click on it, by default there's only two settings, subdivision and offset. Subdivision of course gives you how many subdivisions once the bevel has been made. And the offset value, you really don't need to use that unless you want something specific, like, for example, it's set to 5. So if you want 5 centimeter offset, then you can type in a specific value if you need it and then hit apply. However, for this, we're just going to be eyeballing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the subdivision count up to 1. Then we'll zoom in here, and it works just like the other bevel tool. You just click and drag, and that will bevel for us. So I think that looks pretty good right there. All right, now notice down here at the base, where the base connects to the vertical piece of this column, it's razor sharp along there. So we also want to put a highlight, or I'm sorry, not a highlight, but a bevel there to catch the highlight. So we want to do a loop selection on that base. More than likely, I'll probably have to zoom in a little closer. There we go. And we'll use the solid chamfer again, and we'll bevel that. So you can tell that's actually putting a really nice bevel across the bottom. Looks good. And we also want to do the same here with this lip. Make a bevel there. Even though the direct light is not going to be hitting that, it's still going to be good just to have one there anyway. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to do these edges here that go around where we made those extrusions. So I'm just going to do all of those in one go. See, I'll come back to that in a minute. want to do these here. Make sure I got them all. All right, and then we'll go back to the solid chamfer tool and just bevel those as well. All right, so we got that. Now we can go back down here and let's start on these things here, these extrusions. Now these particular extrusions here that are coming outward, we need to do these a little differently. And this is where I'm going to show you the difference between the standard bevel tool that's been in Cinema 4D for all these years that we've been dealing with compared to the solid chamfer plugin. So I'm going to grab some of these edges here and I'm just going to show you this really quick. These are the edges here that I want to bevel. So I'm going to select all of these edges here. Back over here to this side as well. All right, so those are the edges there. I might as well do these here. Okay, these are the edges here that we want to bevel. Now, if we were to use the standard bevel tool, we need to set it to convex. And I'm going to give a subdivision value of 3. Let's go in here to this corner. Now, watch what happens when we bevel this. Now notice that it's beveling all of these edges over here just fine. Those look okay. However, this here in the very middle looks rather crappy. We've got a triangle, we've got some other triangles, got a couple of quads in there, but for the most part, the algorithm that's being used on this corner isn't really quite doing it. Now, if you're doing something where the camera really isn't going to be getting in all that close, well, of course, this will work just fine. But let me show you what the solid chamfer plugin does. So just really quick before I do, let's go up here to this corner here. Look at this edge here. You've got these elongated triangles along here. If we deselect it, you can see it's actually creating some very weird looking shading in there. And the same for up here as well. You can see that just doesn't look quite right. So let's compare this now to the solid chamfer plugin. So I'll right click and get that. And now when we bevel, look at the nice quads and the nice angles we have there. Everything is nice and neat. There's no triangles and all of that has been beveled at that corner properly. If we go over here to this, now I know those look like triangles, but you've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are definitely quads. Just one point has been elongated out to hit that corner. But that looks a whole lot better than the other one did. So I'm going to undo that because we need to actually bevel that a little bit more. But you can tell just how much better job the solid chamfer plugin does versus the standard bevel tool. Now again, those of you with R15, the new bevel tool, it may produce the same results that the solid chamfer plugin is doing. I don't know. Maybe some of you can make a comment on this video and let me know what the R15 bevel tool is doing when you do something like this. I think that would be kind of interesting to see the differences in a corner like this particular corner right here with the solid chamfer versus the R13 bevel versus the R15 bevel. So any of you guys with R15, feel free to comment, let me know what it did there on the corner, or hit me up in a private message and send me a screenshot and just kind of let me know what's going on with that. I think that'd be pretty cool. All right, so we're going to do the same thing over here with this one. And I might as well go ahead and select that loop there as well. Now for this, the camera is not going to be going inside, so I'm not worried about these back things here. I'm not really worried about all of that. You can bevel those if you want. Making sure I didn't miss anything, and we'll just bevel those. Wrong bevel tool, we'll get solid chamfer. bevel that. There we go. Now we're getting some weird shading in there. And the reason for that is because we probably need to take the Phong angle down from 80 to maybe something like 40. And that will kind of help out a little bit there. We may need to go lower with it, but we since this is hard surface, we definitely want to come down from 80. Because the default setting is 80, and we want to come down from that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause this video because I don't think you want to see me sit through all of these edges and bevel every single one of them. This is going to take a few minutes to do this. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to bevel all of these edges, and then once I'm finished, then we'll come back and we'll keep going from there. Okay, so now that we've got that taken care of, we can go ahead and just build a quick top part of it here, which I'm just going to keep rather simple. So I'm just going to create a cube and build off the cube. So maybe something that's a little too big. Let's shrink it down a little bit. All right, so something like that will be just fine. And let's take and make it editable. Now you can use the fillet option here to bevel these corners. However, I want to wait before I do that. So I'm just going to make that editable. I might as well rename these. So we're just going to say top, base shaft. All right, so I'm going to grab the knife tool. I'm going to be in loop mode. And what I want to do is I want to make some cuts along the edge here, about like that, just so we get a square shape there. Same over here. And then on the back side, I'm not really worried about that at the moment. And then of course we need to maybe put something like there. So we need to select those across there, pull them up. About right there, I guess we'll be okay. We'll take these front ones, but before we do, we need to make another loop cut there. We'll take this front polygon and extrude it back. We'll take it back about there. All right, so I think that'll work for now. We've got our basic shape, so we'll just go and bevel some of these edges. Now, on this corner, I don't want to bevel those edges there. I just want to bevel these here. So make sure you don't have any of these selected when you start to bevel this, because there's absolutely no reason to bevel those. Solid chamfer, and we'll just bevel those like that. And over here on the side, what I'm going to do is let's put something over here on the side. Let's extrude inner, and maybe we'll just extrude that. Let's extrude it out, and then we'll go in, back in. This is where our oxygen tanks or whatever those things were that I have here on this one here on the side. That's where we'll have those sitting at. And then let's see, what can we do? We'll extrude inner one more time. And we'll take that polygon there that's highlighted, and we'll grab the scale tool and we'll scale it down. And then we'll extrude that out. Before we extrude it out though, I want to push it down to about there. And then we'll extrude that out. All right, so grab edge mode again. And we'll probably need to select some of these manually. Okay, so we'll select those there. And I suppose we could probably select that corner there as well. And then we'll bevel it. All right, now we're getting some weird artifacting going on over here, and it's coming from right there. So what we need to do is probably select around that base, and we might as well go ahead and select all of these edges on this extrusion. Let's try it again and see what happens. All right, that's not too bad. Could probably clean that up a little bit there. The reason for that is because we kind of scaled that down and then brought it down towards the bottom to make the extrusion off of, so it's kind of elongating. Let's see if we can change the falling angle to kind of clean that up. Change it to 40, and instantly that problem is solved. So there we go. We just forgot to change the falling angle on that newly inserted cube that we used for the top. All right, so we want to select these edges here. Don't want to do that one. Make sure we get that one at the bottom and this little piece over here. And we will bevel that. Okay, so there's our little beveled floating docking station, whatever you want to call it. Let's see, what else could we do with this? We probably need to add some little oxygen tanks to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and end this part, but if you want to add more detail to it, you can. More than likely what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take, and I'll just show you just real quick, in case you're following along and you want to try to be as accurate as what I'm doing here. I'm just going to take one of these tanks, which is the capsule, and I'm just going to play around with it here, and I'm going to, let's see, where's my, here we go. Take it and put it into place here. Scale it down so it sits there, and maybe something like that, and then put it into place into there. So something like that. All right, so there's our little oxygen tanks on the side, and then for the top, what I'll do is I'm just going to add a sphere, but I'm going to change it to hemisphere. And I'm going to change the segments to about 40. And I'm going to change my display here so I can actually see what's going on. And I want to scale that up just a little bit. Place it about there. Control, click, and drag to duplicate it, and then this one's going to be scaled up and be bigger. And then we'll take those two and drop them down on the top. All right, so there's our little docking station, or whatever you want to call it. This about wraps up this first part on the modeling. In the next part, we're going to start getting into the texturing and some of the lighting, because we're going to have to make some preview renders back and forth just to make sure that the lighting is looking correctly. But I wanted to spend some time on this first part just to show you how important the modeling is, especially when you're going for realism. And with a space shot like this, where we're going to have a direct light source, we want to pick up those really nice rounded corners to pick up the highlight on them, and that's going to add to the realism and make it look a whole lot better. And for those of you wondering, this is exactly what I did with my Destiny from Stargate Universe, the Destiny ship, which is kind of almost done. I still got a little bit left to do on it, but this is the same thing that I did with that, just beveled away. If you could actually see the model itself, just the beveling is just crazy all over the place. But if you want really nice highlights, to see all the little detail, well, that's what you have to spend the time on. All right, so I've been rambling on long enough. In the next part, we'll continue on with this. So hopefully this has given you guys an idea of what to do before you actually get started on the lighting when you're looking to light a space scene. So I will see you guys in the next part.